Okay, friends, we are doing Bible study. You have 5 minutes to join us. We're going to be in Second Samuel. I don't know how many chapters we're going to cover. We'll see how it goes. So we'll see you in 5 minutes. The link should be in the chat now. See you in 5 minutes. everyone. Look, we have a very special guest. Jan God has come on. Why today? And why do we get to see your eyes? Previous time, you always wear the glasses.
Well, I have a presentation because of what's coming up. So I was originally going to say, like, is this a Bible reading or a Bible study? And if it's a Bible reading, then my presentation doesn't matter. But if it's a Bible study, then maybe I have something to contribute.
What is about to happen, Cassandra? Do you understand?
I think he has a 30-slide PPT presentation for us. So I expected to have the sound, the effects, everything.
Well, this was my comment, is because this is the T-Grog background. Good decision. Matt, how you doing today?
Doing all right. I'm severely underslept. I'm traveling right now, so I'm operating off of, 2 hours of sleep caught on a red eye, or 2 red eyes last night. So not quite sure which way's up, but.
Oh, wow. No, where you said you're in Seattle? You're Seattle?
Yeah. Seattle based.
Okay.
But the nice thing about a rig is I can take it and travel. So family's from Virginia, so I'm heading out there for a long weekend.
Okay. Nice. Okay, Yanni, I'll bite. How do you want to do this? What are we talking about? Do you want to do, you want to get into the passage and then at the end you do your little presentation, or what do you want to do?
I'd rather do it first. First of all, like, is the sound okay? Am I stuttering? Like, do I have internet problems? Because it's not a good presentation if every 10 seconds there's a stutter or something. So, like, are you hearing me in both ears? Because when I was testing, I could only hear the sound in one ear. So I'm just, I want to make sure things are nice.
Yeah, I hear you in both ears. It's good. Okay, let's see.
I don't know how this works exactly. I'm gonna try to put in my PowerPoint, but I'm not sure it'll work. Does it work? Let's see if it works.
It's gonna. I will receive a request for you to share it. We're in chapter 15, yeah? Cassandra, while he figures that out, how are you doing?
I'm doing good. Fine. How much am I supposed to tell you? How much do you actually want to hear about my week?
I mean, I guess I'm interested. Are you all right? Yeah, we can get into
it. No. What's the annoying thing is my doctor told me I had psoriasis and gave me a cream, and I put it on, and I thought it was okay. But I guess I'm supposed to keep doing it for a while, and then now it's like on my face instead of just like.
Oh man, yeah.
So that's very irritating.
One of my closest friends just got a bone marrow transplant, and it resets your immune system. And he's had psoriasis for, I think, decades, and it all went away because it's actually your immune system, right?
Oh, really?
Yeah. You can resets your immune system. Like you can turn it off and turn it back on again. Like seriously?
Well, so my friend's allergic to things too, and the doctor said he won't have his allergies anymore as well. Because allergies are your immune system reacting to things as though they're really dangerous. Like as though it's a dangerous pathogen, right? That's what an allergy is.
This is because of the transplant.
Yeah. So he just got a bone marrow transplant, and that it resets your immune system, right? You're getting someone else's immune system is what's happening.
I'm surprised I haven't heard of more, I guess, cosmetic bone marrow transplants then. That seems like a luxury some people be willing to pay for.
Yeah.
I mean, that would be a horrifying surgery to do to get rid of your allergies, but...
So I have more to say on
Have
this,
you
but
gotten
Yanni, have you figured it out?
So have you? Because I guess I could also just share screen, and I would just go through the
Yeah, you can share the screen, or you can
presentation. Because I'm trying to upload it now as PDF, and
okay. You could email it to me, and then I can share it. If that would make
if you would
happier.
prefer that, I guess don't
No,
risk.
you
Oh, there it appears! Yay!
just follow your heart. Okay, cool, wonderful. We're going to be adding that to the stage. Before we do, I just want to tell everyone this one thing. So, because of this thing with allergies actually being your immune system acting up too much, this one guy had a theory that why we have such strong allergies right now is because no one has parasites anymore. And so this guy gave himself like worms because he was so allergic to peanuts, and he says that it cured him. And then he started mailing people his parasites, and the U.S. government like said you can't do that. Like you're intentionally sending biohazardous material. Like that's the purpose you're doing this. Yeah.
Oh, is it so purposely infecting people without their knowledge or consent?
Yeah, but no. The people are requesting it so that it can cure their allergies.
Okay, so it's not like the parasite Unabomber.
No. So Cassandra, if you would be willing to get a couple of parasites, it might clear stuff up. Just a thought. Oh, that's good. Okay, guys. We're going to the presentation. Thank you, Yanni.
All right, so I will just say, next slide, please. And that's when you will go to the next slide. So yes, welcome to the School of Yes and I will be your substitute teacher for the next 20 minutes, maybe.
I'm just going to make sure.
Slide,
okay, I don't know what he's going to say. I don't know if I approve, and I don't know if
serious business, David. First of all, I'll start by saying that this
is great.
Week.
Oh, did you freeze?
So my internet for some reason stutters every 10 seconds. So in order to compensate, let's just try to almost like wait a few seconds every time someone wants to speak. Otherwise, it'll get confusing, and that won't be fun. So sometimes the Absaloms of the world need defending, right? They need defending, and I hope that the Hebrew there is grammatically correct. Okay, I tried hard. So, I just this is about. I got really depressed making this presentation, man. Like this presentation changed direction 3 times. I was almost done Monday night, and then I had to change direction, and then last night I had to change direction again. And now I'm like, what am I doing with my life? So next slide, please. This is my first depressing tangent. Little did I know how correct I was. I wrote, some say Big Ab was good and just, almost tongue-in-cheek, because I am literate and I know how literature works. And if Joab is calling for Absalom, the first thing I think is, oh, Absalom must be a good guy and the bad guys want to kill him. This must be a grand conspiracy to kill Big Ab. I had originally written this whole presentation only in the context of 1 Samuel and 2 Samuel up to chapter 14. So originally, I was just going to write it based on what we read, But at Monday night, I had it finished, and then I decided to keep reading 2 Samuel. I didn't read the rest of 2 Samuel, and after having read it, I started to think, man, should I even present this? This feels like beating a dead horse and calling it CPR. Next slide. So, depressing tangent continued. Originally, I was going to perform my own exegesis, but then I realized it doesn't matter. And it hasn't mattered for thousands of years. Welcome to the club, me. Because honestly, this presentation was just an exercise in me trying to convince myself that I'm not stupid. So, what moment in time made me understand that this is a futile exercise? Next slide, please. So, 2 Samuel, chapter 17, verse 14 in the King James Version. And Absalom and every man of Israel said, the counsel of Hushai the Archite is better than the counsel of Ahithophel. For the Lord had commanded to frustrate the good counsel of Ahithophel, so that the Lord might bring all the evil upon Absalom. And I was like, oh my God, this sounds so similar to the second stanza of God Save the King, which is, our Lord, our God, arise, scatter his enemies, and make them fall. Confound their politics, frustrate their knavish tricks. On thee our hopes we fix, God save us all. And I was like, oh my God, there are levels to this. Levels. Next slide, please. So, because I respect that we are on the eve of World War III, well, why bother with an exegesis? Let's make it relevant. Let's bring some contemporary fun to this presentation. Next slide, please. I'm reading this, and I tell myself, I have to see what this says in Greek, because ancient Greek is like a mass spectrometer. You can see kind of the molecules of what creates the organism that is now the modern version of the text we read. So let's check out what the Greek says. Next slide, please. And here we can have a little bit of fun, because this is all super. It ends, chapter 14, verse 17. Gage kurios epi abesalom ta kakapanta. And I start laughing hard. Because of kakapanta. Do you guys know what kakapanta means? So I asked the AI to give me a fun translation of this verse. Next slide, please. And Absalom and all the dudes of Israel were like, yo, Hushai the Archite's advice is way better than Ahithophel's. Turns out the Lord had a plan to mess up Ahithophel's genius level advice so he could throw all the shit at Absalom. And I thought that was the funniest stuff ever. Next slide, please. Because of course, caca.
We all know caca.
It's poop. Yeah. Oh God, it's so funny. Oh, it was so funny. And I didn't ask for the next slide, man. You pre-jacked. I did not ask for the next slide. But anyway, it doesn't matter. And I made a joke. Yeah, you can go now. Okay, so I decided to have my own jokes, and I came up with poo-poo, which is a funny constipation joke because the morphemes here are poo and poo, and it would be fire pain, which of course is the joke of that when you have constipation, it hurts. So I was just making jokes because, oh man, the English are conniving guys. Next slide, please. And this is just a fun joke regarding the Greek versus the Hebrew. The Masoretic text is matzah crackers compared to the Koine cake. And I'm not reading the comments, so I hope I get trashed for all these things I'm saying. Next slide, please. So, happy accidents, linguistic entropy. So during this whole exercise in trying to defend Absalom, I end up giving the AI, DeepSeek, I gave it this input. Given the similarity of the spelling of the letters Chi and Kappa, would it not be poetic that the connection between the two words kakos and chaos were lost to time chronos? Next slide, please.
Sorry, do you think that we're talking about chapter 17 right now? Because this week we're on 50.
I don't know what that means.
Okay, keep going. We'll see if this ties into the chapter we're talking about. Because I think you're 2 weeks too early.
No, but can you just explain?
Yeah.
What do you mean I'm 2 weeks too early?
Like we're 2 Samuel chapter 15. Your references are.
Oh, I'm aware. Well.
Okay.
Listen, as I said, I changed. See, at first, thank you for making this interruption. At first, this presentation was going to be just insulting David. Okay, it was one big insult regarding David. And of course, during investigations, things happen, and I changed direction. But originally I was angry at you, David, because you said Andrew was right. So yes, when last Bible session, when Yosef came on, I thought Yosef came on to agree with me. That's why I wrote Yosef is my hero, because I thought Yosef was agreeing with me. But then I rewatched it, and I like, oh no, Yosef is actually agreeing with Andrew regarding a technicality about hanging a person, hanging a corpse. But I was thinking the whole time that he was agreeing with me, but he wasn't. So now I have to defend Absalom because no one else is defending Absalom. So that's why this is happening, because we're gonna see how Absalom was wronged, and this is like I'm preparing the audience for the future chapters to understand that Absalom is the good guy. He's good and just. And when I had a slide originally that was like criticizing your statement of, just a second, criticizing you when I said some see Absalom as good and just, and you said, no, I don't think so. And I had a whole thing about that, but things happened and I had to change my presentation a bit. So yeah, questions?
Yeah. I do think Yosef is on the side of Absalom being a good dude. I was pretty sure that was part of what the conversation was.
Thank God.
Yeah.
And I do remember one of the
striking
things from last week was Michael Sartori having a pretty compelling case for at least like Absalom's justified reasons that I've been thinking about all week long. So maybe not necessarily he was a good guy, but like he had legitimate reasons for doing what he did that were worth considering.
Very interesting.
Yeah.
So let's go back to the humors. So DeepSeek wrote this poem, and I'm going to read it in English, because if I read things in Greek, I read it as an American English speaker of the 21st century. That's good, Yosef. Excellent. It's good that we're on the same side. So, time, the thief of words, has hidden the connection between evil and chaos as the abyss hides the light. And I thought this was a very nice poem. And then I noticed something. I noticed the word abyss. Next slide, please. And I was like, oh my gosh, abyss is way too close to Absalom. That's crazy. Look at that. Statistically, that's amazing. I mean, the statistics of that letter order, is awesome, you know? And I'm sure, you know, if you ask the AIs if there are any relations, they will say no, because the AI gets its corpus from human writings, and no one's going to say that these words are connected. But, you know, I love the coincidence that Abyssos and Absalom are so similar. They are so similar. And there's another famous guy with nice hair. And I started to realize that this is not just about Absalom, or Absalom. This is about lost heroes, and you know, things got interesting. Next slide, please. This is the once forgotten memorial of JFK. A secret sculpture built for John F. Kennedy's grave vanished in the 1970s. Half a century later, the mystery has been solved. And what's so interesting, this is all coincidence, none of this matters, is that this memorial was in Oak Spring Garden. And according to the King James Version, Absalom is killed because he gets stuck in an oak tree. And the word for oak in Greek is dryad, or is drai. So the word dryad comes from the word oak. And I thought that was a very funny coincidence that these humors rhyme. Next slide, please. This was part of my original presentation, which was comparing the birth of Adonis and the transformation of Mira to Absalom, because things do not repeat, but they rhyme. And I thought it was interesting that Adonis is a Semitic name, and Absalom, of course, is a Semitic name. And Adonis was birthed by being released from his mother, turning into a tree. And Absalom was deathed. Deathed is an archaic word that is no longer used. He was deathed by becoming caught in a tree and stuck. And Adonis was the personification of male beauty. And Absalom was the most beautiful man in all of Israel. And Adonis was killed in the woods after being speared by a boar's tusk. And Absalom was killed in the woods after being speared 3 times. And I thought this was a very interesting connection because, of course, Yoav has this what I would, generally correct idea that all these myths are connected. And the world is a lot smaller than we think it is. Next slide, please.
Okay, before I do, I'm going to put a timer on. You have 4 more minutes, okay?
Oh, good. Reminder to criticize furry David about Jesus and the 2 trees. Next slide, please. Do you get it now, furry David, about being hung on 2 trees?
Sure.
Is that a yes? Next slide, please. So this was originally part of the original presentation because it was about criticizing David. And so I have no doubts that David truly means beloved Uncle David. And the famous line, of course, is, "This hurts me, then it hurts you because I love you for the good of the nation." What will a man do? No, we're almost done. Don't worry, guys. We're almost done. Don't worry. I feel a little bit wronged and hurt because David thinks that I can't manage time, but I forgive him because David does not know me. So, what will a man do for the good of his nation? This is the question of all time. And here we're going to touch on a modern Absalom. And we're going to have this is something. Next slide, please. So once upon a time, I swore an oath to the Constitution of the United States of America. And this is Article 14. This is the 14th Amendment. All persons born in the United States are citizens of the United States. This is the United States claiming you, okay? This is a command. This is an order, okay? And when we talk about Absaloms, this presentation ends up becoming just a defense of all Absaloms, not just Absalom, this one we're talking about. It's the metaphorical Absalom. And given certain events that have happened in the past week that should have happened or not happened, I thought it became poetically appropriate to talk about this. Next slide. Do any Christians know who this guy is? I know the Jews probably do. Do any Christians know who this guy is? Let's wait for a comment to pop up to see who knows who this Absalom is. I'm going to have to proceed. David gave me a timer, man. Someone post the comment. Who is this guy? Okay, I have to go forward. This is the brother of Benjamin Netanyahu. This is Yoni Netanyahu, a hero, once a hero. But apparently, some say that he is a national hero who doesn't quite deserve the title, according to British military historian Saul David. And I'm starting to think these Brits, man, these Brits, something is wrong with them. Confound their politics, frustrate their knavish tricks. My research clearly shows that Yoni Netanyahu was not a central figure in the planning of the operation of, what was it called? Entebbe? Something like this. We'll see the word later. Entebbe. He joined at a later stage. Oh, why are you skipping? This is important. We're defending Absalom. I won't show, you're going to have a lot of time later to talk about whatever you want to talk about. This is about setting up the context of the wrongs against the Absaloms of all epochs of history. Yes. Netanyahu, okay, so anyway, the point is Netanyahu's key mistake firing at a Ugandan soldier nearly led to disaster. We don't know and will never know what led him to make that decision. So already they're putting blame on Yoni. They're blaming him for something. Next slide, please. Oh, we're almost done.
No, we're done. We're done. Yeah, we're done. We're going into the text.
Wow,
now.
this is so meta, David. Do you understand?
Yeah, you're on mute now. If you want to do Bible study, we can do Bible study. That's cool. If you want to have a conversation, we can have a conversation. That's fine. But this time is for Bible study, and I think people. I gave him a fair shake. Yeah, did I? Okay. It was also a bit ranty where I didn't even know where he was going. Look, it may even be very interesting to have conversations with. I think Yoav and Yosef were understanding it a lot more than I was, but it just didn't seem to be connected to the text as we're trying to understand it. And if it is related to the text, it's probably in 2 days. Does that make sense?
I think it was a pure troll. No, I think it was a pure troll.
Yeah. Cassandra, you've known Jan God, well, how he has appeared in the corner. Have I treated him unfairly, or did I give him too much rope?
I don't think it was unfair. We got like 15, maybe almost close to 20 minutes.
Yeah. Okay. Good stuff. Let's go into the text. Look, I'll even let him come on some other time if we're going to talk about it. Yeah. Yosef is saying it wasn't pure troll, I don't think, but it was getting creative. Yeah. It's just, it needed to be edited. It was like, there may have been a point. But it's like, look, we've all been in a bad sermon where some guy is just ranting on and on. It's just like, can you please get to why we're here? So yeah, I very much agree. Yeah, I seem to wander off topic. Okay, great. Okay, then we're going into Absalom's conspiracy so that we get through the chapter within I only got an hour more. So let's go ahead. Go ahead, Cassandra.
After this, Absalom got himself a chariot and horses and 50 men to run before him. And Absalom used to rise early and stand beside the way of the gates. And when any man had a dispute to come before the king for judgment, Absalom would call him and say, "From what city are you?" And when he said, "Your servant is of such and such tribe in Israel," Absalom would say to him, "See, your claims are good and right, but there is no man designated by the king to hear you." Then Absalom would say, "Oh, that I were judge in the land. Then every man with a dispute or cause might come to me, and I would give him justice." And whenever a man came near to pay homage to him, he would put out his hand and take hold of him and kiss him. Thus Absalom did to all of Israel who came to the king for judgment. So Absalom stole the hearts of the men of Israel.
Okay, let's pause a second there. Isn't this just wonderful? This is like exactly what people still do. Like even the kissing, like the idea that you'd be kissing babies. There's stories of like people who would want to become. There's a guy, I can't remember who it was, when he was trying to become president. His hand was like chafing. It was like red because of how like he would shake thousands of hands in a day, like just so that the people would feel connected to him, right? Like you shake a hand, that's fine. It does nothing to you. But if you do that for like 4 hours in a day, and then you do that the next day, you're going to start really feeling it, right? Yeah, even just the amount of time these people would be standing, right? Like politicians. Like I've done being an actor, being in plays where you have like a big part and you're not sitting down for like 3 hours straight. You feel it, like you, yeah. But he's also he's stealing the hearts of the people. He's interacting with them directly, being like, yeah, real shame that you won't be able to get an audience with the king, right? But this is all he's dedicated to. Any other thoughts or things that you might be noticing in this intro? Yeah, people are just distracted by the trolling which had occurred.
No, I think it's interesting the way he's undercutting him, though. Like, because he is spending all of this time in order to be there and act like David doesn't have the time or the will to be present in that way.
Yeah.
But it's one of those things. I remember my uncle talking to me about when he worked at a pizza shop, that he would work in the back and make the pizzas. And it would always kind of irritate him because the customers would always thank the guy in the front and tell him how good the pizzas that he made were, even though he didn't make the pizzas, but they saw him and they would talk to him.
Right.
And so because of that, that was just in their mind that he's the pizza guy, even though he ran the front. He wasn't in the back making them. But of course, when you're in the back, nobody sees you. When you're doing the work, nobody sees you.
Right. There's a Shakespeare play about this called Coriolanus. Coriolanus is about the best guy to lead, but he's a bad politician. And the people, like, they don't think that he's qualified because he's not good at making like speeches and everything, but he's actually very, very good as a leader, like actually doing the job. It's also interesting, though, because within this context, the chapter begins by saying he got himself a chariot and horses and 50 men to run before him. So he's Yoav was talking about this last week. He's starting to get himself a group. There are men who are beginning to follow him, right? Like, he's got himself a real group of people, and he's got real weapons behind him. He has a chariot and horses. It's not like he has, a knife or a sword. He's preparing himself for a battle.
All right. I guess it seems like he must have been planning this for a while, right? Because maybe it's just a compression of the text, but it does seem like he is going really smoothly through this, going from like, now this plan and then this plan, and just the whole way. It seems like very calculated.
Yeah. Michael Sartori, the man with 1,000 words. What have you to say?
I don't know. I mean, Absalom's smart, so he knows what he's trying to do.
One of the images that I also see, and I got this from Yosef previously. He reminded of us in a previous story. The gate in these ancient cities was like an entire complex, right? There would be like rooms, and there, like, it's more it's considerably larger than he's just standing outside as people are wandering by. It would be more like standing in the middle of people going through customs, right? Like, it's a lot. He seems much more official where he's at. Andrew, do you have anything to add, or did you just want to join us?
Dude, I woke up today and there was nothing to eat for breakfast. There was nothing. We legit were out of everything. Like, what am I supposed to do? So anyhow, I'm driving. I'm driving now. Shit. I'm driving.
Thank you. Thank you for that.
To Brugger's Bagel, and I've got nothing. I'm running on the white monster that I had sitting in my car.
Thank you, Andrew. Thank you. So good. Thank you, Andrew. Okay. Does anyone have anything else about the section that we just talked about? Shall we go on?
Just thinking about your comments about, the leader who is effective but doesn't appear to be, or just a poor politician. But you need that whole package deal. You need both to be an effective, just, wise leader, and also seem to be effective. And Absalom seems to be doing the opposite of what his father is. His father, David, is still an effective leader to a certain extent, but it's not visible, it's not seen. And he's like, well, let me just create the reputation. Let me appear to be an effective, just ruler, and that's good enough. That's all I need. you
Oh,
think I am, they'll start to follow me.
Matt, that's great because we discussed this before. There's actually different levels of becoming king. And in both Saul and David, it showcases how they become king on every single layer. Because Saul gets rejected as king by God, but is still king by the people for quite a while in 1 Samuel, right? Like there's certain stories that you're like, okay, God's rejected Saul, so he's not king anymore, right? No, you're still having to deal with it for quite a while because the people still saw him that way. And there'll be an entire chapter just on God choosing him, but then there'll be another chapter on the authorities choosing him and like the people, and another chapter of him showcasing that he deserves it, right? Like, and so right now it's like what is that called? A three-legged stool that can support some weight, right? The kingship is like three parts, and Absalom knows at least how to get one of those legs of the stool, whether or not, like we have not seen. This is also why I think Jan God was actually making a point earlier is what are we supposed to think of Absalom? Like because we haven't heard God's opinion on him and on what he's doing right now. It's like we kind of have to figure it out. Do we think that what he's doing is good or what he's doing is bad? Because we don't get even a voice in the text jumping in to say, and he was a bad dude, right? We know that he stole the hearts of the men of Israel. Is that good? Is that bad? I don't know.
And
oh, did you? Sorry, I think you're muted.
David's house will last forever. Yeah, sorry. Yeah.
Go ahead.
Try this again. Like, and no matter how this plays out, like God's promise in Samuel 7, like will remain true because that's part of David's house. So,
yeah,
like, who knows when David's personal reign is supposed to end and Christ wants to come along after it.
Yeah. Oh, okay. All right. We're going to continue on. Cassandra, would you be so good as to continue reading? Well, actually, sorry. Let's get Sartori. He's oftentimes in a car and can't really talk.
Okay. All right. At the end of 4 years, Absalom said to the king, "Please let me go and pay my vow, which I have vowed to the Lord in Hebron. For your servant vowed a vow while I lived at Geshur in Aram, saying, 'If the Lord will indeed bring me back to Jerusalem, then I will offer worship to the Lord.' The king said to him, 'Go in peace.' So he arose and went to Hebron."
I'm sorry, you gotta pause 1 second for this. There would be a belief at this point that if you made a pledge to God, like that God was tied to the place where you made the oath. So it's not enough that he praises because it's the word, it's the divine name, Hashem or Adonai or whatever. I'm not going to say the other one. But it's not good enough that he could just make an offering there. He's setting it up in a way that would be understood by the culture that he's got to go back to the place where he made this vow to God to make the offering there, right? He's got to make a pilgrimage, if you will, right?
Yeah, but he says he made the vow while he lived in Geshur. Isn't he going to Hebron because that's where the ark is? Because it doesn't get brought to Jerusalem until Solomon builds the temple, I think.
Let me try to figure this out. Okay, show me. I don't know the geography well enough, man. That is a good point if that is the case.
Because Hebron was the capital. I mean, David's the one who captured Jerusalem, but before that, Hebron was the capital.
Oh yeah, it's the capital of Judah. That's right. The ark is not in Hebron.
Okay.
Okay. It's the capital of Judah. Thank you guys, as I'm trying to figure this stuff out. I was always bad at geography, always quite bad at it. Awesome, that's fine. Okay, let's. Do I just have that wrong then? Maybe I have that wrong. Okay, let's.
Well,
let's
maybe
continue.
that's then if that's because if it's a thing of Judah, like how David made those like they had those like special offerings that were like their own tribal customs or whatever. So maybe that's what it is.
Okay, yeah. Oh, and it's his birthplace. Yeah, that's right. Okay. All right, let's continue on.
Okay.
So verse 10.
Okay. But Absalom sent secret messengers throughout all the tribes of Israel, saying, as soon as you hear the sound of the trumpet, then say, Absalom is king at Hebron. With Absalom went 200 men from Jerusalem who were invited guests, and they went in their innocence and knew nothing. And while Absalom was offering the sacrifices, he sent for Ahithophel the Gilonite, David's counselor, from his city Gilo. And the conspiracy grew strong, and the people with Absalom kept increasing.
Excellent. Yeah, so even this bit, the idea that it's one of David's counselors, right? He's getting it. He gets the high up officials, right? He's getting multiple people. He does have people back home. He needs an excuse to leave because otherwise it's going to seem suspicious, right? He's gathering a group of people, and he is couching it in religious observance, which is also interesting. Like,
yeah, Ahithophel, is that not also Bathsheba's grandfather or something, right?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So he's connected to now. Okay, yeah. And then, so while Absalom is like gathering, winning the hearts of Israel over, I was wondering, was that none of that was reported to David at the time either? Because later on, it does seem like it takes him by surprise.
Yeah, I find the relationship between David and Absalom so interesting. And I think it's something that a lot of parents can relate to, where how much suspicion do you have of your own children or of your family? How much room do you give for someone that you love deeply to betray you? Right? Just because you like them so much that you see it too late. Or that David knows that it's something he deserves. There's actually like this section where David is on the run. He seems like a good guy again to me. It almost like seems to me like David knows that he deserves kind of what's happening. And so to what extent does he even fight it? Because he knows that he's done some wrong.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I think it's interesting. I think because David, he's like, I would say not the bastard or whatever, but like he's like the son of the other wife or whatever amongst all those other brothers he had, and like he's the one out in the back fields, and so in one sense it's like maybe he kind of had a blank slate kind of. He experienced fatherhood as a child, like in an absentee way, which is not great, but it also maybe rids him of bad habits, because he's very passive in how he raises all these children. And, I think you could probably make a similar comparison between like Jacob, Israel, where because he's got, and it's not he had bad habits, or I guess you could say that he passes on to his older children, and then when he gets to Joseph, it's like he's made all the mistakes as a parent, and so like Joseph gets a very different experience of being fathered than his older brothers did. And probably you could say a similar thing with David and Solomon, but here he's kind of like, these are the the first batch of pancakes always comes out bad or whatever.
The first batch of pancakes.
Yeah.
It's a great way of describing some of those first children. Amnon, first pancake. Man, yeah. Yeah. Any other thing that you're noticing, Cassandra?
No, I mean, yeah, thinking about the way the family dynamics are is really interesting. And then, yeah, I like the addition of the birthing order theory. I mean, that definitely adds a lot if you're younger or older sibling. But yeah, I don't know. Again, because David has counselors, I would think that what Absalom was doing wasn't entirely secret.
Right.
So yeah, whereas y'all, where are the people that you kind of think would be dealing with something like this? These kind of peripheral things.
Well, and
Watching the horizon.
What is, like, he has people. Is no one watching Absalom? He was brought in to the city under suspicious circumstances, right? He originally wasn't allowed in because he did some things that would view him as a usurper. And it was only out of a technicality, like the woman tricking David, that Absalom even gets invited into the city. And no one is watching him. No one is seeing what he's doing, as he is like no one who is going through the city. Like he's talking, it seems like he's talking to whoever will talk to him, right? Absalom is anyone coming in is going to get a mouthful about, oh, wouldn't it be great if I were in charge? Like it is suspicious.
Yeah, definitely more dry when you want more details.
I wonder if it's like, even if he's not like, I mean, because presumably he could be the heir apparent or whatever, but unless if you're going to be like a really super jealous king, like Herod that killed all his own kids or whatever, like you'd have to assume like you don't. Amnon's like the kind of playboy that's just hedonistic, not doing anything. But in contrast, like Absalom is furthering the family business in some way. So I mean, I wonder how much of it is people noticing like Absalom as having all these qualities in contrast to David, or just so much as like, wow, that Absalom, David's son, he's a really bright guy. Like things are looking up for the future, like because there is, you gotta think, or even if you think about like, if there's not necessarily like some sort of strictly defined birth order, like line of succession, but it's more like merit based, then it makes sense for the princes to be doing things that are furthering the kingdom, because then they're proving that they're worthy to be king. So yeah, there's a lot of things that could be going on there.
You're talking about like spying and whatnot, but like who's writing the book that we got? You know what I mean? Like, what book is this? This is Samuel or something?
Yeah.
Like, how'd Samuel figure this out? Did Samuel write Samuel?
Samuel is dead. He's quite dead.
Samuel's dead. Oh shoot. Well, who's giving us this stuff?
Oddly enough, Samuel has been dead for
since the first book.
Yeah, he dies in the middle of First Samuel of all the.
Jeez. All right.
But
it's probably one of those guys that's in Solomon's court or something.
But even
do you think he's a Absalom enjoyer, or like is he more on David's side?
Solomon?
Okay. No, this guy who's writing the book.
Oh, the guy who's writing it is on David's side. Like, I don't think it. I think that when you have stuff about spies and conspiracy, like in the middle of the story, I mean, that's stuff that you only know at the end of the story. So they're putting those details in to frame the narrative.
Mm.
Yeah. Even
Oh,
within
okay.
this, like connecting it with First Samuel, actually, there is a way in which you could read Absalom as a David figure. Like he is to David what David was to Saul, right? Where there's one king in power and he's doing things that offend God, Adonai, and he's gathering his group of people that believe that he's the rightful person, right? The way that David did repeatedly when all this stuff was happening. Yoav, you have joined us. Good to see you, friend.
I have a question. When did this happen? What the first sentence of this paragraph? Doesn't it say that it was 40 years past?
I think it only says 4. This paragraph is at the end of 4 years. Oh, here it is. Hebrew 40.
40, yeah.
Yeah.
Significant. 4 years makes sense. 40 years from what time? Okay. I'll take it as 4.
Yeah, that's 40 since Saul was anointed is one of the interpretations of that. That's interesting.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay. Let's Yoav, do you have anything else?
Yeah, the spelling of horses. When Absalom was going with the horses and chariot, Yosef, do you find the spelling of horses correct? That's my other question. I'm putting my attention into horses and mules because they're going to be mules sometimes and horses sometimes, rather than donkeys or camels that will be mentioned in other places.
Okay, he says chasir, but that's usually okay.
Chaser, it's missing. Okay, say, okay, letter is missing, but never mind. Okay, I will not mind.
Okay, let's continue on. There's a lot of people talking in the chat. Okay, stuff like this makes me sad for all the regular people throughout history who couldn't figure out who the good guy was and made the wrong choice. This is timeless politics. Someone saying you should advocate for Yanni to finish his presentation. Go so hard on info. That's a good Cassandra comment.
Isn't it funny how like everyone's worried about being on the right side of history, and it's kind of like instead of doing right, they're just like, what's the least possible I can do such that like whatever posterity will view me as like above average, right?
Yeah.
Anyhow, all right.
Okay,
Yeah.
Cassandra, read. Let's go back into the text. Cassandra, read for us, please.
And a messenger came to David saying, the hearts of the men of Israel have gone after Absalom. Then David said to all his servants who are with him at Jerusalem, arise and let us flee, or else there will be no escape for us from Absalom. Go quickly, lest he overtake us quickly and bring down ruin on us and strike the city with the edge of the sword. And the king's servant said to the king, behold, your servants are ready to do whatever my lord the king decides. So the king went out and all his household after him, and the king left 10 concubines to keep the house. And the king went out and all the people after him, and they halted at the last house.
I think I said this before. Like concubines, they weren't just carnal it wasn't just a carnal profession. It's like they're the ones keeping the house in order. Like they're the people who. So he leaves a bunch of people that are just kind of doing that. But that will go bad for him that he did this. Okay, good. Unless anyone has anything else to say, Cassandra, would you keep going?
All his servants passed by him, all the Kerethites and all the Pelethites and all the 600 Gittites who had followed him from Gath passed on before the king. Then the king said to Ittai the Gittite, "Why do you also go with us? Go back and stay with the king, for you are a foreigner and an exile from your home. You came only yesterday, and shall I today make you wander about with us since I go I know not where? Go back and take your brothers with you, and may the Lord show steadfast love and faithfulness to you." But Ittai answered the king, "As the Lord lives, and as my lord the king lives, wherever my lord the king shall be, whether for death or for life, there also will your servant be." And David said to Ittai, "Go then, pass on." So Ittai the Gittite passed on with all his men and all the little ones who were with him. And all the land wept aloud as all the people passed by, and the king crossed the brook Kidron, and all the people passed on toward the wilderness.
I love this. This is, yeah, what a great little story. There's so much interesting stuff happening here because, like, David is going to want to come back. He doesn't like that he's on the run, but the way that he's talking to other people, like, if you join me, you could die. All this stuff. It's very interesting. He immediately becomes such a good guy in my mind. Like, I have so much compassion for him while he's fleeing. Anything else?
Let's see. When he's fleeing, he says, "We need to go, otherwise we'll all be destroyed." I was wondering if he flees so that Absalom, I guess, doesn't destroy the city.
Oh, that's
Like
interesting.
in a fight.
Yeah, like famously Paris in World War II. Like, we don't want things burnt down. We want to, yeah.
Would like to answer RJ. He asks, how is it all Absalom was so popular, but David won anyway? I already answered it in the contents of the quarrel with the people of Shaul. The hard fighters, the experienced fighters will always be David. What Absalom got are the conscripts. It was good for local mafia operations. It wasn't good for a real fight.
Do you think also, like, there seems to me to be a couple of people near the end of the story of this little drama where they're waiting to see who's going to win. There's a lot of people, if you're a soldier, you know, like, in a lot of those situations, you're just seeing which side am I going to be on when all this ends. Like, how different is it for you if it's David or if it's David's son? What? Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, that's the whole thing, like, with, you know, where does people's loyalties lie? And, like, sometimes, like, you know, maybe if you think about just the common people, like, when these sort of things happen, you know, and you just are some dude and you live in the village, it's like your loyalty is to the land. So then you're like, what? Oh, Absalom's our king now? Okay, I don't care. Now David's the king again? Great. I don't care. But, you know, but then if you're the people that are involved on the personal level, then, you know, you go where they go. So, you know, it's just kind of funny how, like, you know, and that's probably true for all of, like, wars and histories and all these things. Like, you have some people who will, you know, in towns whose names change on the map and nothing changes, or you have people that go, you know, and what somebody conquers is, you know, an empty shell or whatever. So It's just, it just depends on what is, what's more important to the people, what they're trying to do.
Joseph is saying, I mean, because of military service and tiny population size, I don't think the men can be so nonchalant.
No, I don't. Well, I'm not saying anything on that scale. I'm just saying it's more so of the thing of like, okay, like if the army comes in, and conquers like the capital city, and you live somewhere out in the woods, it's like technically you are now a citizen of a different country, or the country that you are a part of. Like you could not know, if depending on where you are, like because
Right.
like that's the thing. It's like you capture the capital, and now you've like won the whole country, or it could be that sometimes every little town and village insists on being conquered before they will surrender individually. But I think it just depends on these sorts of games that people are playing. Like, I mean, in a sense, that's what it seems like with David leaving. It's like he's not so worried about like I guess in a sense he's doing like because now he's Saul, but he's doing a different thing than what Saul did. Maybe he's saying like, well, if this is what God wants, God is the one behind Absalom coming into power. I'm not going to fight him. I'm going to get out of his way. And then ultimately that's why the kingdom is restored to him, because God was not behind Absalom's coup, but he had a different set of priorities.
Yeah.
And that's even the thing, like, because essentially it's like, did Absalom really want to kill his dad, or did he just want to be king? And if he just wanted to be king, then David leaving is a good way to get him out of the way. He would be happy with that.
Okay, let's continue on. I think this is a very interesting conversation. Yeah, RJ just skipped a line because that's having the arc helps too, because there's a very important person who's going to be on David's side in this situation. So Cassandra, continue on.
And Abiathar came up, and behold, Zadok came also with all the Levites, bearing the ark of the covenant of God. And they set down the ark of God until the people had all passed out of the city. Then the king said to Zadok, carry the ark of God back into the city. If I find favor in the eyes of the Lord, he will bring me back and let me see both it and his dwelling place. But if he says, I have no pleasure in you, behold, here I am, let him do to me what seems good to him. The king also said to Zadok the priest, are you not a seer? Go back to the city in peace with your 2 sons, Ahimaaz your son, and Jonathan the son of Abiathar. See, I will wait at the fords of the wilderness until word comes back from you to inform me. So Zadok and Abiathar carried the ark of God back to Jerusalem, and they remained there.
So we had those previous situations where guys were dying, where the ark was being kept when David was on the run from Saul. You'll remember that story where the items are, dudes are getting slaughtered, or what's it called? The high priest gets slaughtered. And so this seems to be a bit of a callback to that. And you get this image of what is the ark doing? The ark kind of is going with David, but then is going back to the city. Like, it's really begging the question, which side is God on? Yeah, that's what, before Avshalom could not be in Jerusalem, and coming back in is a sign of divine favor. Absalom did / said the same thing. Oh, sorry, he's saying that's supposed to be David. Yeah. Interesting. Okay, Michael, would you read for us starting in verse 30?
But David went up the ascent of the Mount of Olives, weeping as he went, barefoot and with his head covered. And all the people who were with him covered their heads. and they went up weeping as they went. And it was told David, Ahithophel is among the conspirators with Absalom. And David said, O Lord, please turn the counsel of Ahithophel into foolishness. While David was coming to the summit where God was worshipped, behold, Hushai the Archite came to meet him with his coat torn and dirt on his head. David said to him, If you go on with me, you will be a burden to me. But if you return to the city and say to Absalom, I will be your servant, O king, as I have been your father's servant in time past, so now I will be your servant. Then you will defeat for me the counsel of Ahithophel. Are not Zadok and Abiathar the priests with you there? So whatever you hear from the king's house, tell it to Zadok and Abiathar the priests. Behold, their 2 sons are with them there, Ahimaaz, Zadok's son, and Jonathan, Abiathar's son. And by them you shall send to me everything you hear. So Hushai, David's friend, came into the city just as Absalom was entering Jerusalem.
Yeah, this is the business that never gets turned into a movie. Or maybe it does, and Yoav is going to send us a movie about it, like he sent us the play that was about the last days of David, where like there's these people. What side are they on? Are they giving? Because there's people whose advice will be the downfall of Absalom. So is their voice like? We know their advice will destroy them. Do the people giving the advice think it's good advice, or are they intentionally destroying the guy? What is going on? It's understood. Traditionally, he is understood as David's teacher in Judaism, his rabbi. That's funny.
Instead of a play, I posted a song at the top of the comments.
Oh, that's right.
A song that summarizes this chapter very neatly. That song doesn't go to the subject of the concubines. There's another song in the Israeli pop culture that explicitly described the situation with the concubines, but it got censored for this group.
Okay. Is it? Can we just viewer discretion advised, and you can post it? I can't share it because if I share music, we get a copyright strike.
Okay, there is the link at the top of the comments. The very top of the comments.
Oh, that one. Yeah, I was listening to that before. Okay.
Yeah, that's the one that I'm going to publish. The other one is going to remain obscure.
So I think the reason why you can't see it right now, Yoav, is because you posted it before we started. So guys, look in the comments. He's going to post it again. He'll do it so people can hear it. Yeah, I do like this. Don makes does some good noticing. And Yanni doesn't approve, praying that Absalom gets bad advice.
Well, that's an interesting one because, I mean, I don't know. I don't think that prayer is really answered in a sense, because the thing is that Ahithophel gives good advice, and that's what everybody knows. But Absalom starts ignoring him in favor of the foolish advice, and it's almost like the thing where it's like not a hair of his head touching the ground. It's like what would have happened if Absalom had, I mean, and maybe this, you could say this is God. No, God's the one that's in control. So his plan is not like it could have been. Absalom follows Ahithophel, and God has Ahithophel start spouting off nonsense. Instead, he makes Absalom into the fool, which I I don't know. Maybe in some ways that preserves the legacy of Ahithophel. He ends up, taking his own life, I believe. But, it's like that would be a more unnerving thing. Like in a sense that if he actually did start spouting nonsense and Absalom followed it, but it pushes the blame on Absalom. Absalom couldn't discern wisdom from foolishness when he listened to his two counselors.
It's also very interesting because of the proverb of Solomon, where it speaks of what is it exactly? Better to be a poor man with wisdom than to be a foolish king who refuses good advice.
Yeah, that sounds right.
And that does seem like what he is.
I was thinking about in the beginning when God says that the kings will take your sons and stuff. I don't think it applies directly to this, but I guess just seeing the way that the political stuff in the monarchy kind of ripped the family apart.
Yeah.
It kind of feels like that in a way, because otherwise I don't think this is what either of them would want.
It makes me think of another verse in Proverbs, though, where it talks about God. It says God directs the heart of the king. He directs it like the course of a river or whatever.
Yeah.
And that in some sense, because David's asking, like, make the wise man a foolish person, but God is saying, like, no, like wisdom is a real thing. It's trustworthy. So the wisdom doesn't actually change, but God changes the heart of the king. And it's almost in a sense of, I think if you have a certain amount of wisdom, you probably don't want to be king because you realize that's kind of a crappy job. Instead, the people that get that job are the ones who are more malleable to these forces that really drive things. Like being the king is not really being in charge a lot of times.
It's the parable of the trees. You're getting back to the parable of the trees. Do you remember the parable of the trees?
I don't think so.
It's one of my favorite sections of Judges. Listen to me that God may listen to you. The trees decided, let me see how well I could just do it by heart. But no, I won't. I'll reduce it. In Judges, all of a sudden we get this random poem where a guy says, listen to me that God may listen to you. The trees wanted to have a king. So they went to the fig tree, and the fig tree's like, I'm busy. I'm making figs. I'm creating this sweetness that's getting from God for men. I'm busy. So they go to the olive tree, and the olive tree says the same thing. I'm growing olives. I'm busy. I'm making oil, which is like what people anoint themselves with. I'm anointing from God to men. Like, I'm busy. What the grapevine says the same thing, cheering people's hearts with wine. I can't do it. So who do they find? They find a thorn bush. They find the bramble, like a tree covered in thorns. And the thorn tree says, okay, you can come under me to be like, I'll be the king of the trees. But if you've come to me in bad faith, then fire is going to come out of the bramble, and I'll be the kindling wood that'll set the tallest trees, the trees of Lebanon, on fire. Right? Like that's what the parable of the trees is about. All the trees who are already doing good things are busy. They can't. Yeah. They're not going to be leaders. They're not. You're not going to get. Yeah. You're going to get a thorn tree. Okay, I think we finished this. Did we finish the section? Let me just check.
I would like to address the important question. Absalom, good or bad? Definitely bad in the end. Yeah. But what is exactly the point when he turned bad? And I think it is that point of the two advisors. Later on, he's going to get a good advice and a bad advice. The right solution was to take no advice. I mean, why should he go after David at all? I mean, one advice will go with lots of soldiers, the other advice will go with a few soldiers. Don't go after David. That's exactly the point of mistake. And the moral of the story, sometimes if you have a good advisor and a bad advisor, the right solution is to take none.
This is interesting.
Well, I think for these stories, it's kind of interesting because now, at least like in some movies and stuff, you'll hear a lot about like these morally great characters. But it's interesting to look at these stories and see the complexity of like good or bad.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think what Yoav was saying, like with not taking the good advice or the bad advice, it's the problem here is that why does he decide to do this thing in this chapter? Like, there's already a king, and then he's just like, now's the time for me to overthrow the thing. Like he wasn't patient. I mean, and that's why I say, like, he had legitimate frustrations with what his father was doing as being king, but he should have waited for his father to die before he crowned himself king.
Well, that's something about David, because that was part of what worked in David's favor before he was king, is that he waited.
Yeah.
He had patience.
Which is what
And then
Yoav was saying. Yoav was making that point last week. Absalom knows he's going to be king, but not now. Later, he'll be king. he's
Yeah, but he also, he could, but the thing is that he doesn't, because so there's the problem of like he wants to be king and he doesn't want to have a relationship with his father, because there could have been a transfer of power. He doesn't even try, though. He ignores his father. He doesn't want to engage with him, and he doesn't. So he has no idea what he just basically makes assumptions about what David would have done or wouldn't do or whatever, and he just acts on his own. So who knows? But who knows what could have been if if things were different.
interesting.
I mean, hey, monarchy with term limits actually seems like that's probably a pretty good idea. 20 years, something like that.
You don't get any longer than that. That's good.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's just weird because then, it's like the thing you have like with in England, Queen Elizabeth was queen so long that King Charles doesn't get to be king until he's already a super old guy, and then eventually it's like it catches up, but you get a young king, but then you're going to have the next king be king for 50 years again or something, and then his son only gets to be king for a tiny amount of time, whatever it is, so like, I mean, I think, well, that's the problem with the boomers or whatever, like there's supposed to be this kind of third act of life or whatever, where you step down and you become the advisor, you become the one who's assisting the next generation, and that's kind of the healthier way that things should go, but it's
Absalom is such an interesting character, because what was he supposed to do? Nothing when what occurred to his sister occurred. So and if there's wickedness, if there's judgment coming for David, like it's still relating to David and spending the time with him.
My judgment on him, he did. I mean, there were tough calls all the way. I cannot criticize him. It was his job to make the decision. I'm not going to criticize him. The point of mistake was going after David to kill him. absolutely unnecessary.
Well, yeah, and the other bit that I think it was Yosef brought up, the idea that one of the people that's in on this is Solomon's grandfather. This becomes even more interesting because wait a second, is he giving advice in earnest, or does he want Absalom to fall? Right? Is this revenge for what happened to Bathsheba, or is it?
Yeah, no, I always assume because he doesn't listen. He gives that. That's the thing. Ahithophel gives the good advice, and it's Absalom who ignores it. If he had done what Ahithophel says, then things would have turned out differently. But like in that, so clearly he was being a good advisor, and he had invested in Absalom. He was done with David, probably for the revenge or whatever. But that's the whole thing. It's because when Absalom doesn't take his advice, that's when he kills himself. Because he said, "Well, this administration's over. We're done."
But he is the one who gives the advice to sleep with the concubines.
Yeah, he does. So Absalom, that's the thing. Absalom follows him up until a point, and then it's at the end. But that's probably the thing that sucks for Ahithophel is that his wisdom remains with him all the way through, and so then when he sees Absalom ignore him, the writing's on the wall. He knows it's over.
Yeah, man, that story too, where it's like, this is quote unquote good advice. That's why Yoav, your perspective has been so good. Because you bring in the military strategy, the elements of it that is just like, let's not talk good and bad. Let's talk about whether or not this is a strategy that's going to give you a couple of inches. Like if you're gaining ground, is that what's happening? Okay.
I'm struggling to understand Achitophel's game. His game should be to have King Solomon, because he's the great-grandfather of Solomon. His play is to make Solomon a king. What does he think of Solomon at the point? So I think he thinks that Solomon is perhaps the next generation, or perhaps unsuitable.
I wonder if he's just because he's so much younger than the other sons, the likelihood of it. I think that might be the thing that, if you're the 10th son in line, the odds, if you're smart and you're thinking about the odds, it's like you probably didn't have much of an inheritance. And maybe he wouldn't want Solomon to be king. Maybe he would want Solomon to go find a peaceful, role in the administration.
Yeah, so Yosef is agreeing with me that there's a possibility he thought that Solomon was unsuitable, or perhaps too young. And if he's too young, it might be the generation after Absalom. We were talking about the English court. There is a Joab in the English court. And this is why the queen reigned for so long. They were hoping to bring the next generation. Alas for them, the next generation proved unworthy. So they're stuck with what they have.
Yeah. That's an interesting, that definitely is, if you watch the show The Crown, that's kind of the thesis at the end, is that the queen has an opportunity to retire early and to pass everything on to Charles, but she just goes, no, not him. So she sticks it out for so long. It almost seems like it may have actually been the plan that she wanted the grandkids, not her son, to be king. And so what do? You keep it so that he's only king for like 10 years.
Yeah.
I'm also liking this bit that Yosef is saying, that it's echoing, the wording is echoing Naomi saying to send back her daughters-in-law. Like as David sends everything back. That's an interesting idea.
Yeah, that kind of echoes that thing of like there's a cost between like loyalty to your tribe or your nation versus personal loyalties, like, you know, so.
The image of sending back the ark connected with that too is so interesting because she says, "Return to your gods," in the book of Ruth. Fascinating. Okay. Anything else? I wondered today if we would be covering 2 chapters because I was like, oh, I think we can get through this chapter pretty quick. But then problems arose. Yanni, if you are still watching, I will have a conversation with you about this stuff if that's what we're doing, right? Like, I could do that. It's just I need Bible study to be Bible study. That's all. Okay, does anyone have anything else they want to share about the passage as we've covered thus far?
Nope.
Awesome. Okay. Michael, I want you to have your own tag there. I think you should do a little bit of graffiti yourself.
Maybe.
Okay.
I don't know. I'm always here in the daytime when you're not supposed to, when you look really suspicious. Bring in spray paint.
Okay. Does anyone ever come and bother you?
No.
Just do it. Okay. We're going to call it there. Thanks, everyone, for coming out. Thank you for engaging in the chat. We'll see you guys next week. Bye.